Ladies and gentlemen, it is my absolute honor to introduce a visionary who has not only shaped India's technology landscape, but has also transformed the way we think about identity, inclusion, as well as innovation. In fact, as the architect of Aadhaar, the world's largest biometric ID system, he has led one of the most ambitious tech-driven public service initiative in the history ever. And as the co-founder initially of Infosys and now as the chairman of Infosys, he has pioneered India's IT revolution. With that, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for me and time for all of us to put our hands together to welcome on stage the thinker, the doer, the reformer, Shri Nandan Nilekani.
Thank you very much, and it's really wonderful to be here at GFF 2025, and each year it becomes bigger, bolder, more innovative. So it's really great to be here with all of you. I'll be speaking about the Finternet, which is an idea. If you remember last year, we had a talk here about the Finternet and how it's a framing of how we can think about tokenization of all kinds of assets, but do it in a way that works within the regulated system and so on. Can you see it? How do I get the slide? Yeah, great. So I'll bring you up to date on what's happening, and we also have a very exciting demo, because this is not just about presenting an idea, but we want to show you all the progress that has happened in the last 1 year. Now, we know that we have achieved a great deal of agency for people. Digital ID at Aadhaar is now 1.43 billion Aadhaar holders. Cumulatively, since the start of Aadhaar, we have had 24 billion eKYCs. It's unbelievable that there have been 24 billion eKYCs, whether it's opening a bank account or opening a demat account or whatever it is, 24 billion or mobile connections. Today, DigiLocker has close to 600 million users who are all using DigiLocker to keep their Aadhaar card, their PAN card, or their driver's license. That's what's happening on identity. So we have the world's largest system for that. And then through the account aggregator system, we now have a huge infrastructure for data empowerment, where people can use their own data to get access to loans or use their own data to get access to personal finance products. And there have been about more than 5 billion data shares on AA since inception. And of course, everybody knows NPCI's flagship great achievement, UPI, which is doing $9.24 billion of transactions per day. See? And very, very inclusive with more than 688 banks, 20 billion transactions a month, 500 million users, 50 million merchants. We know that story very well. But DPI approach has also empowered institutions. So we are now able to do credential and e-docs. We talked about KYC. We talked about DigiLocker. People are keeping all the documents in these products. They're able to share them effectively. So we have reduced the cost for organizations to use credentialing and onboarding. And we can see that in the growth, for example, in the capital markets, where we have gone from just a few million demat accounts to 200 million demat accounts, all enabled by this technology. And thanks to the efforts of Sahamati, the account aggregator system is now moving very well. And you're already seeing a significant number of loans, at least on the personal loan side, where account aggregators use to get bank statements and so on. And therefore, we think that will only grow. Another silent success, because I've not heard too much about it, is how we sign contracts. These contracts could be loan contracts, EMI contracts, whatever. And it is estimated that Aadhaar-based e-sign has exceeded 1 billion transactions. It's unbelievable. I couldn't believe it when I was told by Pramod that e-signing itself, that means, imagine how much people are using it to do online signing. And then, of course, thanks to UPI, AutoPay, and BBPS, we have a complete infrastructure now for payments and repayments, collection, and so on. So all the DPI that we have done in the last 15 years has not only led to individual agency, but also empowering institutions. And a big part of the economic activity you see today is streamlined because of that. Account aggregator, for example, is a great example of public-private partnership, and it has doubled in cumulative consents from about 154 in Jan 25 to 308 by September 25. So this is also growing very rapidly. And I believe that this will be a very big thing in the coming 2 years, as there's a massive expansion of the account aggregator ecosystem, many more applications, many more use cases. I'm sure all of you guys are working on that. And a very cogent example of this is how fast India was able to accelerate financial inclusion. So thanks to the Prime Minister and his efforts on Jan Dhan Yojana, India was able to do in 9 years what would have, under normal circumstances, taken 47 years. This is a great example of acceleration that has happened in the country. So what you're seeing is technology, government, RBI, NPCI, all working together, all the private innovators here, all working together to drive this. But what do we do in the next few years? How do we take it to the next level? How do we get to Viksit Bharat? And we have to go beyond just inclusion to ignition, to allow people to use their, meet their aspirations, to empower them even further. And there are many things to it. For example, while we have done a great job on ID for individuals, we have to do a great job on ID for businesses. We really need a single business ID around which you can do things. We have to make cross-border work better. India is the largest receiver of inward remittances in the world. So anything that we can do to make cross-border payments more efficient can help us. NPCI has already set up a pipe with Singapore, but we have to take it around the world. And most importantly, we have to figure out how to unlock people's assets so that those assets become transactable and can be used. Because the fact of the matter is the Indian economy is moving from a situation where people have assets in real estate and gold, which has been the historical form of savings. They are now moving to financial assets. And financial assets initially in the banking system as deposits, and then financial assets in the capital markets. So that's the thing. So your traditional assets, gold and real estate, then you have savings bank accounts, and saving deposits, and then you have the capital markets. But we have trillions of dollars of assets that are locked in real estate and gold. And is there a way to think about how do we take this, unlock that in a way that people benefit? And we think that tokenization and AI will catalyze this change, that in the coming years, two important trends have happened, the trend of tokenization and the trend of AI, and they will catalyze the change. Now, what is this tokenization? Tokenization is nothing but allowing an asset to travel with all its attributes, sort of a self-described asset. And when you think about it, your 500 rupee note is a token because it has all the attributes there. So when I give you not you guys only use UPI, so you are not seeing 500 rupee notes. But for those poor people, fellows who have seen 500 rupee notes, when I give it to you, that's a token. It has all the attributes in that money, and that's closed. So how can we bring tokenization to land, to real estate, to gold? That's the issue. And what AI is showing us is that you can build a whole new infrastructure using agentic AI, which can make it so much better. So these are the two big trends. We're trying to bring these together. And an example of this, which we'll show you, is a young man called Sachin Patil, who has gold, but doesn't know how to make that into a transactable thing. And with tokenization of this gold, using a trust provider and token manager, he can create a token which is transactable, which is verifiable, which can be transferred, and so on. So he can buy gold like this, sell gold like this, or he can pledge it to get loan used as a collateral. So that's what it's about. But what the Finternet does, and there is a tokenization launch, I think, that Dilip said that NPCI will do today with the governor. But if you think about how do you create an overall framework to consider all kinds of assets and do them in a similar way, do them at scale and speed, and with full regulatory compliance. You can only do that with a proper architecture, which is what the Finternet architecture has done. And this is very important because a lot of the noise in the tokenization world has been cryptocurrencies and other things which are outside the regulatory framework. But what we're suggesting is using tokenization inside a regulatory framework, embedded compliance, but unlocking the potential of tokenized assets. And we also believe that it's not about one morning that you shift to this new world of Internet. There is actually a way to migrate from where we are to the Finternet. So you continue doing what you're doing and doing it better, but also creating new market opportunities and businesses using the Finternet. It's very much a seamless transition from today to the future using all these architectures. Now, this is all theory. We want to show you Finternet in action. We're actually going to demonstrate something that combines the power of tokenization and agentic AI and show it working for a real person on the ground. So with that, I'd like to welcome the grand wizard of Finternet, or the curator, or the guy leading the initiative, Siddharth Shetty, who will give you a demonstration of the Finternet in action.
Thank you.
He's taller than you think.
Thank you so much, Nandan. It's always so inspiring going after you, especially because over the last year, as we've spent time diving deeper into these underlying trends of tokenization and AI, the conviction that we have that this fundamentally changes how people transact in a digital economy, because you move away from spending a lot of time doing API integrations, bilateral contracts, all of that complexity, to a lot more abundance where the rails are taken care of, and you just focus on the flow. So what we really wanted to do today is bring this to life, and this is involved across ecosystem of lenders, financial institutions, and developers. So let's dive straight in. So let me open up the Finternet application. And fundamentally, this is an imagination in our lens of when you think about tokenization or tokenizing any type of asset, regulated assets like money, securities, registered assets like a vehicle or property, attested assets like gold, silver, or energy resources, tokenization fundamentally allows you to drive execution of that transaction, which means I can complete it in real time, programmatically. But with AI added in, what that fundamentally allows you to do is drive the consumer experience, the discovery process. And these really go hand in hand, right? So if you build an AI agent, at the end of the day, if the underlying asset's not tokenized, you'll have to go back to the bank branch and paperwork. So let's dive straight in. What I'm going to do is take you back in time. Assume you were here in March 23. As Nandan spoke about, Sachin Patil's an independent contractor. He is now participating in the early days of the Finternet. And we're going to show you a flow where he opens a Finternet account, proves himself through his skilling credentials, upskills himself, gets access to a job, and goes on to get actually a home loan, an affordable home loan in real time, and then how the back end of this gets enabled. So let's go straight in. So my details are already pre-filled in this case. I go ahead, I create an identity. And so everyone then gets access to fundamentally a Finternet address. And that address space on the internet allows you to hold your identities, your credentials, or any type of asset that you have. And as Nandan shared, fundamentally what we're doing is making these identities, credentials, assets verifiable, so anyone else in the world can verify authenticity, provenance, ownership behind this, and making it transactable, so you can transfer it both in a financial sense, like me transferring money to you, or also in a non-financial sense, like me transferring ownership of a property record to you. So given that India has advanced digital infrastructure like DigiLocker, I can start to import credentials from there and build up my initial profile. Once I've done that and done the base document collection, the way we see this bridging into the real world is, especially as you imagine now higher value assets coming in, let's say property. If I'm transferring ownership of a property, I may even do physical verifications to address oftentimes the social engineering attacks that come in. And that's where biometrics, or what are called proofs of personhood, come in. We'll now go on to link other financial accounts that Sachin Patel has. And out here, what's happening is Sachin's linking his bank accounts, investment accounts, and tax accounts. And this is not just linking to access data, but it's fundamentally linking to also enable transactions. So think of it as read access, but also write access that gets enabled. And so we will move to a world where, if you think of how assets are represented today, Nandan mentioned pull out that 500 rupees, but because of UPI, none of you have it in that pocket. But that was a token that you had in your control. And when we digitized that financial system, that token was now sitting on some ledger. And with tokenization, you'll move to a world where every individual has their own ledger. And that's basically what you're seeing represented here. Now, based on this, obviously, the AI agent can go on to make recommendations to me that says, if I go on to sign up for upskill myself, so Sachin's an independent excavator operator, if he upskills himself into e-excavators, if any of you are in skilling, it typically ends up doubling your income. And so this is basically the recommendations that are given to Sachin. So he decides, he goes ahead, enrolls in the course, applies. This is along with the National Construction Academy, and he participates. Okay, we'll put this in. And so in this process, essentially, his verified credentials are then shared with the National Construction Academy. He has the ability to now participate in the course. He gets it done, completes the course. We are 6 months later. You can see his post-completion of that course. He now has the e-excavator certificate in his wallet. So basically what's happening is all the milestones one goes through over the period of life is essentially credentialized, and a proof is created and put back into that individual's wallet. And so against this, he decides to now access jobs. And because he has verified data, it's much easier to proceed with the entire job process. And now, as he applied and spent the last 2 years working as an e-excavator operator, and he saw a growth in his income, he decides, hey, why don't I start accessing potentially an affordable home loan? And the question I'll ask to all of you in the audience out here is, how many of you actually own a physical property? Raise your hand. And keep your hand raised. No, keep your hands raised. How many of you think that process was as smooth as UPI? If it was as smooth, put it down. So essentially, everyone's hand continues to remain raised, right? And so when we think of different types of assets, the same in the investment side. How many of you would like to purchase a property, but purchasing a property is really expensive today? And so there's no way you can often, like in my case, I can't purchase a property in Bombay, but you would like to participate in the economic growth, maybe purchase a fractional unit. How many of you would like to purchase, say, a fractional unit of a property? A lot of members of the audience, right? And so what you're going to see here is essentially Sachin Patel getting access to that in real time. So he looks at a set of properties. Vedanta Residency is one of them. True Home Finance is a lender on this ecosystem. He goes ahead, applies for this loan, given his increase in income. His various financial data and other credentials are shared with the lender. And in real time, the underwriting is done against the different data packets, and the loan goes on to then be sanctioned. And so what you see here essentially is the loan being sanctioned, and traditionally these processes take about a month. So I decide to go ahead, the sanction letter looks okay, approve it. And now in the back end, what's happening is a loan token is generated along with the property token. And so the property token can be locked because obviously I can't use the same property for another loan. And the loan token is useful because that builds up my credit history. And we won't get into the rest of the flows, but you can imagine now if I have a property token, I can use this to sell it eventually once I pay off my loan. I can add nominees, which can be done in a completely programmatic way. For example, we've been envisioning that you may have an AI agent that creates a will for you, and if the asset is tokenized, you can execute that will programmatically. So let's quickly go through a recap of what happened. Sachin brought together his credentials into a wallet, applied for a job, upskilled himself, got access to affordable home loan financing. But how can it be so simple? So let's quickly go through, in the next minute to two, a quick view of what happened on the back end of that, right? So you had a builder, Arath Builders. They decided that they had a property, Vedanta Residency, that they wanted to make available. So using approved project financing, which was basically a way to do diligence on both the entity that's constructing the project, the land and all of that, along with diligence of the borrower, you brought both of these together. And this is important, especially as India starts to develop its securities market, where today, it's quite primitive because you don't have verifiable data. And so people send manual agents, human beings, to verify does Sachin Patil even exist or not. So I'll show you a quick overview of what happened in the back end, and then you'll hear from Nandan on the rest of what we're doing. So Arath Builders on their dashboard basically has the ability to seamlessly tokenize the property that they're constructing. Once they've tokenized that property, they can request third-party auditors, attesters, to actually verify all the provenance behind that and submit those proofs. And that's very critical for lenders. Oftentimes today, construction contractors and companies have to go and form bilateral relationship with lenders. This inverts the entire equation. So he got the attestations. He now decides to send it to a set of lenders in real time for them to review, underwrite, and approve the entire project. And then on the back end of that, because the underlying asset was tokenized, and I'm getting a bit technical here for anyone of you that are interested on the more financial aspects of this, you had the ability to create a verifiable security. And so you have Sachin Patil here with all the borrower profile data verified. That can then be added into a common loan pool that goes on to be created. And this loan pool can then be shared with an investor downstream. And so this basically brings together a lot of the requirements around observability, supervision, which is absent in many of these economies and flows today. So that's a quick overview. Thanks, all of you, and back to you, Nandan.
So we know that global momentum is building. In the US, for example, they have the Genius Act, with which they're trying to create a framework, a regulation that has been passed by Congress on stable coins. Around the world, in Singapore, in EU, there are all kinds of regulations coming. In some countries, there are specialized regulators, like in UAE, to deal with new technologies. And across the world, people are doing global initiatives and pilots. NPCI themselves will talk about something they've done. So we are seeing now an increasing interest in using this technology and a combination of tokenization and AI to get something done. But Finternet is a way of doing this strategically, holistically, in a structured way for all kinds of assets, high performance, at the same time within a regulatory envelope. And this comes from our learnings of the last several years on how to build at scale, how to build reliably, how to work with regulators, and so on. And this is now growing as a global phenomenon, and you'll see many, many things happening globally. So 2023 was when we started the journey. This is an early picture of the people, myself, Pramod, Siddharth, and Augustine, who at that time was the chairman of BIS, when the idea was launched. In 2024, we came here and we spoke about the playground, and we had a limited set of partners. You can see the names down there, JustPay and Solana and so forth. Today in 2025, this has grown dramatically. You can see the number of people who have come on board this moment. We have 10 cohorts in 8 sectors. We have 30 ecosystem partners and operating in 4 continents. So this is an idea which is going global, whether it's in India, Singapore, New York, San Francisco, or in Switzerland. So you can see the gradual expansion of what's happening. And we think in 2026, we will be live. If the GFF guys invite us back, I don't know whether they'll invite us back. If they invite us back, we will have live examples of Finternet in multiple sectors, in multiple countries, actually delivering value, and the business models will emerge, the commercial models will emerge, so people are going to build great companies on that. So if you want to join the Finternet movement, be part of the build, here's a QR code for that, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you very much.